Hello and welcome to Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. This is the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. And I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining the conversation. Food packaging and serviceware is one of the largest sources of plastic pollution that we see and deal with every day. But the rise of compostable alternatives to petroleum-based plastics could change the character of food service materials, making restaurants, cafeterias, and food delivery packaging part of the circular economy where materials flow from nature to human use and back to nature again. Our guest today is Savannah Seydel. She is Vice President of Sustainability and Impact at Better Earth, which is a maker of compostable tableware and food service packaging. They're on a mission to remove petroleum-based plastics and PFAS-treated fiber from our food packaging choices. Better Earth makes a wide range of hot and cold food packaging using renewable, sustainably grown fiber and PLA. That's a bioplastic that's industrially compostable. This kind of packaging now represents about 8% of all of the materials used in the food service industry. Better Earth sells packaging to business, not consumers, so you're not going to be able to place an order after listening to the show unless you run a restaurant. The company has established an in-house design studio to create packaging and develop circular services. In other words, to put the collection and processing programs in place to keep the materials flowing through the circular economy. For example, they've partnered with farmers in their Atlanta office to source fiber from switchgrass and other cover crops, which create new revenue streams that support family farms. And Better Earth works to develop collection programs to get recovered packaging and food waste into the composting system and ultimately back to the farms where it can nourish the soil. Savannah describes their field to food to field strategy as borrowing biological resources and putting them back again. That's an important mission and one we think deserves a conversation, so let's get into it. You can learn more about Better Earth at becompostable.com. Welcome to the show, Savannah. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and we appreciate you joining us today. It's Better Earth's doing some really interesting stuff. Company launched in 2015, and it looks like it's just going gangbusters. You only raised one round of funding. You've recently purchased another company to keep up with the demand. Tell us, how did the company start? Did you sit down and say, how can we create a circular economy in food packaging?
Pretty much. At Better Earth, we live by this idea that there should be a world that is restorative and regenerative rather than extractive and draining. And packaging is one of the most visceral symbols of both. Packaging is what carries all of our stuff, from A to B, and we are getting a lot of stuff, especially in the food service space. Takeout is skyrocketing. And with that, right now, within this linear economy that we typically operate in, we're pulling non-renewable fossil fuels from the ground to create something that we use on average for 30 seconds or less. And then it goes to this magical place called away, where we don't have to think about it and don't have to worry about it. But all of those, within this community know that that's not really true. And that place called away is encroaching on us, and it's encroaching on us personally, whether that be in our streets, our parks, our riverways and streams, and now literally in our bodies as microplastics. So this is a problem that's severe, it's growing, and it's close to home. And we think that we should be using renewable and restorative resources, especially for something that you might use for a single-use item. So yes, so Better Earth is a 100% compostable food service packaging company that believes in the opportunity to build a systems approach to addressing this problem and building a more regenerative circular future, starting with food service packaging.
Your intention to be circular is what was really compelling to me as I read about you. How do you design a circular economy from the get-go? And that includes, in your case, farmers and commercial or industrial composting facilities to process this material. What's the process of launching a product which has a circular system attached to it?
Within any solution to these big environmental problems that we're facing, right? These problems were created by individualized thought, not thinking about others, right? And the solutions require community and collaboration and intention. So when building circular systems around any widget or system in and of itself. It takes an understanding and community around the value chain. So within ours, as we think about packaging, our value chain is from field to fork to field, right? So we start with building relationships at the manufacturing and at the farmer level, because that's how our stuff is created, is in collaboration with farmers that are raising perennial and native grasses, plants, etc. And so engaging and building thoughtful programs and collaboration with them, then working at the manufacturing level to ensure that that manufacturing process is as sustainable as possible, as low resource as possible, and then ensuring that everything that we do is being designed for that end of life and its new life, right? So ensuring that all of our new products are designed with composting in mind, are optimized to best serve our composters, and then that they're breaking down in that time frame. So working alongside our composters and supporting the growth in composting infrastructure.
Is the composting infrastructure growing fast enough for us to keep up with the opportunity to be circular?
I think that composting infrastructure is growing, but I agree with that question that I think it can be growing faster. You know, BioCycle just released their latest report on the state of composting infrastructure in the United States. I highly recommend it as a resource to your listeners. It's very enlightening. And composting has grown. It's grown at a clip of around 8% over the last 5 years. I think, and I know it would have grown faster, but let's think about what those last 5 years were. It was COVID. And it was hard. It was hard for any business, let alone a composter. So I feel very confident that between consumer pressure and ongoing legislation that we will see skyrocketing growth in composting infrastructure in the years to come. So it is growing. It can be growing faster.
Now, who are your customers? You don't sell directly to consumers. So how is a consumer going to know that they're frequenting a restaurant, for instance, that uses a Better Earth product?
Right. So we sell to food service distributors around the country and around the world who then service anywhere where there's food, right? So hospitals, schools, amusement parks, restaurants, cafes, etc. So you can know that it's a Better Earth product by seeing that Better Earth logo and label around the product itself. So right now you'll see that Better Earth logo on a majority of our products, and we're rolling out the Better Earth logo on all of them within the year.
As you think about the growth of the company, you're designing essentially regional circular economies for your products and developing services that are built into that economy. You're headquartered in Atlanta. How did the company grow up and develop a regional network? Maybe there's something here that every company could learn from. I'd love to hear that story.
Yes, I think that all companies and us as consumers learned a lot through the COVID-19 pandemic around the need for more resilient supply chains. You know, things were just stopped cold turkey. Things fell off the shelves. I think all of us can reminisce on the hand sanitizer debacle or finding toilet paper. It was scary. It was very scary. And that's something that we have known, and many environmentally minded organizations have known for a long time, that supply chains need to continue to become more hyper resilient, more localized. And in so doing, not only are we able to have a more stable supply chain, but we're also able to have a much lower carbon footprint and build a lasting community in the spaces that we serve. So over the past 5 to 6 years, we've been on a journey ourselves to invest in growth in domestic manufacturing of compostable food service packaging. And so we've started here in the Southeast with our manufacturing partners to build out a system where we have a network of farmers that are growing native perennial grasses to supplement their farming activities. And then within 100 miles of that farming operation, we are manufacturing compostable packaging from those substrates and then serving customers. So it's hyper localized, hyper regionalized, and that is for a reason. And so we're excited, you know, we want to ensure that this works first and grow once this has been solidified, and then continue to grow through the United States, building those hyper resilient systems. And yes, I do hope that it's something that more companies continue to adopt.
Do you think in terms of managing the flow of stock through your system, and beginning, for instance, with the farmer, when you engage with a farmer to grow an additional cover crop to produce more income for them and produce the material that you use. Do you then project forward how much material is going to flow to the composter? Are you going to, and then even potentially back to the farmer? Are you thinking at that level, or is that more, and not to make a pun, an organic outcome of having simply started within a circular intention?
I love the pun. Yes, I think it is an organic outcome of the flow of this system, but it is something that we are actively looking into and really excited to connect those dots. So, an initiative that we are just jumping into and really excited about is connecting with our composter partners and working with them. Right now is happening organically, but what we want to do is make it happen more intentionally, where we are in that hub and spoke model, really serving to connect the dots from farmer to composter more intentionally, and get the compost that our composters have back onto those farms. And what that does is also helps engage our farmers in utilizing compost more across their farms, right? Not just on the native grasses that they're farming towards this product, but across their operation. And this is an incredible regenerative farming practice that our farmers can engage in as well.
Talk a little about the use, about those cover crops and how they can both restore the soil and provide that ongoing additional income to the farmer, because I think that's a really important element of this story.
Yes. So within this operation, farmers can actually use what's often surrounding land or pasture land or degraded land. So they're able to use land that they otherwise wouldn't gain a profit from. So they're not replacing land towards growing this, but really it's adding to their overall operation. And then from there, this is a perennial crop, as I mentioned. So you plant it once, and then you can continue to reap that harvest for decades to come. Over 20 years we now have logs of. And with that, once it's planted, it's an incredibly resilient crop. And again, because it's native to that area. So it needs little to no inputs, and it relies on just rainwater. It doesn't need any additional water. And those roots continue to grow. This is the most powerful part. So a recent excavation found root systems that were over 12 feet deep in the ground. What this does is it brings more nutrients into the soil and sequesters carbon. We just recently completed a life cycle assessment on this product line, and we're able to find that that agricultural process is carbon negative because it's sucking in so much through just the general growing phase. It's very, very powerful.
So a no-till approach that the farmer is using to generate additional income restores the soil. On the other end of this, what other materials are you using? Particularly, where are you sourcing the PLA, the polylactic acid that you use as a bioplastic for a lot of the materials? Where's that come from?
Yeah, we use a variety of different plants to create our product line. So we use bamboo, sugarcane bagasse, and we also use corn and sugar beets. So corn and sugar beets create PLA. And we utilize a variety of different plants because they offer, whether it's different performance or different environmental profiles. So bamboo is highly renewable. It can grow up to 3 feet a day. And with sugarcane, that bagasse is actually the leftover product from the sugarcane process and would otherwise be landfilled or incinerated. So we're able to give that new life.
I want to take a quick commercial break. This is a great story. Let's get back to it in a moment. Now let's return to the conversation with Better Earth's Savannah Seydel. We're talking about compostable packaging. You know, Savannah, I read your sustainability report, and I noted that you haven't published carbon, water, and waste reduction goals, which, seems to be the very heart of your business. Why is that?
Yes, thank you for checking it out. So we went through our initial environmental process starting in 2019 is when we began to really dive into these different numbers. Unfortunately, COVID did delay some of that progress, and we're excited to build out a comprehensive environmental management system within the next year. So it is underway right now. And in the meantime, that has not stopped our initiatives towards carbon, waste, energy, and water. Across our operations, we have been working on a few different areas. One initiative is to right size our packaging. So if you think about commercial products that are palletized and sent out, any change you make on the packaging level has cascading ripple effects. So we were actually able to right size and make our top product lines 55% more efficient. That means 55% more packaging within a case. That has dramatic impacts from an operational carbon footprint perspective, as well as waste and others. So that's just one initiative. Another, from a scope 3 perspective, is we partnered with Georgia Tech, one of our colleges in the area here in Atlanta, and we examined the footprint of our local distribution system, right? So when our products leave our distribution centers to our customers, what are those vehicle miles traveled and how can we address that? So we went through a full analysis and we're able to see that by placing new distribution areas in strategic zones closer to our customers, we would dramatically lower our footprint. And so we have since launched a West Coast distribution center that over the next 10 years will reduce our vehicle miles traveled by almost 50%. So we're really excited about that too.
It sounds as though taking an intentional circular approach also brings more of your emissions within your visibility. Scope 3 usually accounts for 90% of a company's emissions. Do you have a sense of how much Scope 3 accounts for Better Earth?
Well, off the top of my head, I do not. Most organizations, Scope 3 is the biggest, as you mentioned. It's the gnarliest, and it's hard to quantify, but we are working towards engaging all of our partners in the process, right? So because we are uniquely engaged across each part of our value chain, we are able to have that closer look at our Scope 3 emissions. And so that starts with having that more hyper-regionalized manufacturing approach, which we are growing into and so excited about. It goes into understanding and partnering with our distribution partners to really understand those vehicle miles traveled and reduce that. And then down from there, to the composting level and helping expand access to composting infrastructure.
Since you provide food service materials, one of the big challenges is collection and sorting that material into the various types that need to be composted or sent for recycling. And otherwise, how do you coordinate with restaurants, for instance, to help them improve their collection?
Collection is one of the most critical aspects of the composting process. That's the front gate towards getting that material where it needs to go. There's a few key areas that across our industry we are working on to really help both end users, customers, and composters and getting that organic material to the compost pile. The most critical thing that all of us can do within the industry and that Better Earth is diving into is standardized labeling. We need streamlined labeling to really support this system. So the Biodegradable Products Institute, alongside the United States Compost Council, has actually just recently launched an updated labeling guidelines, another great resource to help across the industry in educating consumers around what is compostable and what is not. So those standardized labels you are going to begin to see everywhere, and that will really help clear up a lot of confusion around what is compostable and what is not. But then in addition to that is pairing that labeling on the packaging itself with streamlined labeling across our bins as well. I'm passionate about this because actually, we all have odd jobs as teenagers. Mine was as a zero waste coordinator. I was at my college and I stood by the trash cans and the waste bins and educated people around what was compostable, what was recyclable, and what was trash. And, we need people like that. Something that I love is at State Farm Arena and Mercedes-Benz Stadium here in Atlanta, Georgia. They take this very seriously, and they do have waste volunteers standing at their bins to help educate people. And then they actually, when they catch a fan putting something in the right bin on their own, they celebrate them. So they choose somebody at each game and then celebrate them on the big screen, and they get a prize, which I think is awesome.
Labeling is so important in terms of helping us understand what to do with things. Let's talk a little about the word compostable.
Yes.
A lot of our readers, when they see the word compostable, assume that means that it will break down in a home pile. Your products require industrial composting. Can you talk a little about why that is and what the benefits of sending it to a commercial composter are?
Absolutely. So a commercial composting system creates the ideal conditions to compost a wide variety of organic material. So think meat bones, avocado pits, compostable packaging. So it's able to bring everything together and then compost it with the right heat and microbes necessary to efficiently move that through a system in 90 to 180 days or less. Now, a backyard composting pile, I've got one. Our friends have one. The tricky thing about a home composting environment and let's say certifying packaging for a home composting environment is that my pile might look a little bit different than my aunt's or my uncle's, because maybe somebody lives in Maine, maybe somebody lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and someone's in the Northwest. So there's that temperature, that size, the technology that they're using is so various that it is hard and tricky to certify on a home compostability basis, recognizing that the time frame itself might be a little bit more ranging based upon the variables considered. However, there's exciting developments underway for an American home compostability standard, and we feel very confident and are excited to participate in that once it's available.
PLA, bioplastic, is kind of a challenge in the composting world. In some states, for instance, Colorado recently banned bioplastics in compost loads. They accept only organic food waste. How do we create a commercial composting system that's consistent from place to place, in addition to being effective? Have you thought about that? And is Colorado's decision a good idea?
Yeah, so A1 Organics in Colorado recently banned bioplastics due to an onslaught of broader contamination issues. So in their scenario, what they were really experiencing was a lot of stuff that was not compostable. So they were experiencing glass, boots, you name it, that was coming into their piles, and that's a safety issue. And so they needed to take charge, build a little bit more control in their system. And in response, the state of Colorado actually came out with a truth in labeling bill that creates standardized compostable labeling for compostable packaging so that it's easier for composters to identify, and also slaps on the hand other types of materials that are trying to incorporate greenwashing that can confuse both consumers and then ultimately composters. So A1 Organics, made that decision, and the state of Colorado has pushed forward to help support them. So to your question around building standardized systems, right? We don't want to have the same issues that the recycling industry has had, which is that single stream recycling where things are confusing and people are more wish cycling than anything else. We don't want to see that happen to composting. And what I appreciate is the stand that the Biodegradable Products Institute, or BPI, has made alongside partners like the United States Composting Council, that certified BPI compostable products are for food. So what I mean by that is other products that might have some compostable labeling, you're not going to see that BPI label on it because it might be laundry detergent or a dog poop bag, or et cetera, et cetera. So what needs to go into the composting pile is all organics and food waste that we desperately need to get out of a landfill, and those type of packaging that carry food and food waste into the compost bin. And compostable packaging is just such an important aspect of that because it literally carries in more organic material, and it creates a complete and comprehensive solution for that consumer, where unlike recycling, where things are often contaminants to the recycling stream, in this scenario, at that State Farm Arena experience that I was talking about, you just have to put things in one bin and it moves forward to the composting environment. But in order for that to be successful, standardized labeling is going to be critical.
Do you feel that extended producer responsibility and the producer responsibility organizations that are set up under these regulations are going to be the key to unlocking a really efficient circular system? Or do we need to be thinking about purely private initiative instead of regulatorily directed change?
No, it's an important one though, because a lot of people forget that our waste system is largely privatized.
Yeah.
And, I think one thing that astounded me is that right now we actually don't have a comprehensive map around the country of what our recycling composting looks like. So there was a bill.
Earth911 has that.
Oh, there you go. Then we got that. But at the federal government level, they need more data on the state of recycling and composting. There was actually the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act that was in Congress, and it has had bipartisan momentum, unfortunately has not been able to move forward, but that provides the data necessary for us to just get a baseline around where we're at. Thankfully, we've got yours in the meantime. But the issue, because of that fragmented and broken system, that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And so I am very excited about momentum and extended producer responsibility to help address some of the gaps, because us as taxpayers have been paying the price for a company's disposal of their packaging. And as a consumer, as a taxpayer, I don't think that's fair. So I'm a huge fan of extended producer responsibility. I'm very excited about its momentum. One area where I think that we can continue to improve is in education around the comprehensive aspects of extended producer responsibility. So some of those first EPR bills that you saw, something that I found interesting is that there was a fee for all types of packaging.
Right.
And then that the collection actually only went towards building recycling infrastructure. So I take a little bit of issue with that, because we need more composting infrastructure, not just for compostable packaging, but for the large amount of 1/3 of all of our food that's being wasted and going into landfill. We have to address that. So what was exciting is then thereafter, again, just more education and understanding within the community. You saw bills like Colorado and California as more thoughtfully incorporating the composting community, bringing a composter into that advisory council and designating funds towards the growth of composting infrastructure to help address that need.
Well, one of the challenges with EPR is that they're very materials or industry specific. There'll be an EPR law for paint or for batteries. Do we need to be thinking about a more shared approach to building that recycling and composting infrastructure that would really turn us into a circular world, instead of a bunch of one-off solutions where an industry says, well, we took care of our problem, we don't worry about anybody else? How should we be thinking about sharing this burden of creating a truly circular world?
I think this is a theme across this conversation, that the solutions to these problems, right? The problems were individualist, fragmented. The solutions are going to have to be comprehensive and collaborative and inclusive and intentional, right? Across everything that we've been talking about. So yes, if I could raise a magic wand and get one wish, that would be incredible, to have a more comprehensive waste system where it's clearly labeled, where consumers are educated, and we know exactly where things need to go, and producers are helping pay towards the responsible circularity of that product. That would be incredible. Now, I think we have if I'm being realistic, a very, very long way to go until we get to that space. But I'm excited to see more states coming forward as leaders to help start asking those questions, because we need to be asking those questions if we're going to get to those solutions.
So today, compostable packaging accounts for 8% of the market. Where can we reasonably expect to be 10 years from now, do you think?
Yeah, compostable packaging has continued to grow at like a 4% clip, but I don't think that number really conveys the momentum that we're really seeing in this market. 3 in 4 people worldwide want companies to stop producing so much single-use plastic. There is massive growth in the compostable space because people want to reduce our dependency on petroleum, something that's a non-renewable resource, for something that we're using for a shorter period of time. We should be really leaning in to the plant-based, bio-based solutions that are available to us, that we can ultimately recycle back into the soil that our farmers so desperately need. So I think that you're going to continue to see in the food service space this transition towards plant-based materials, and at the same time a continued and more comprehensive waste management system where both recycling and composting are at the table.
4 out of 5 consumers say that they will go back to a company that helps them recycle or compost, which I think is an incredible impetus to make this change for brands out there. How can our listeners help encourage that activity? What would you suggest somebody going to a restaurant this afternoon do to make a difference?
I think that your listeners should look at the packaging that they receive if they get takeout, or if they're going to the grocery store, how their food is packaged. and begin to use their voice and ask questions around, hey, have you thought about thought about this? Have you thought about incorporating plant-based materials? Have you thought about adding composting to your operation? And they can go a step further, whether it's using your map, or other resources available to explore composting in their area, and let their favorite restaurants know, let their grocers know, that these resources are available. Help connect the dots. And most importantly, listeners can also continue to advocate for access to more composting infrastructure. The United States Composting Council has state chapters around the country. They're rapidly growing, but they may not be in your state yet. So I really recommend folks to look up and see if there's a Composting Council chapter in your area. And if there isn't, seeing if there's opportunities to engage and help create one.
Savannah, thanks so much for taking time to talk with us today. It's been really interesting.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was my discussion with Savannah Seydel. She is Vice President of Sustainability and Impact at Better Earth. And you can learn more about the company and its products at becompostable.com. The question that we continue to ask as we have these conversations is, how fast can we change? Better Earth's intentional approach to developing circular products is an example of how to accelerate progress by creating wins for everyone at every step in the process of making, using, and reusing materials. The farmers make more money and they restore their soil. Restaurants and food delivery services can provide more sustainable packaging options to diners who want them. Commercial composting companies get more organic material with less contamination, and ultimately that compost can go back to the farm and contribute to growing the next round of crops. Of course, this is the idealized version of the story because these solutions take time to win support at each of those steps I was just describing. And the most challenging is selling new packaging to food service providers. And that's where you can make a difference. When you're at a quick service restaurant, or if you're ordering food online, ask questions. Is this packaging compostable? What happens to the waste that goes into the bins at the restaurant? Or can I put my packaging in my compost bin instead of into my garbage can? And if you're at the store or at the restaurant and the staff doesn't know, tell the manager about how to find compostable packaging options. A great place for them to start, or for you to do your own research, is the Biodegradable Products Institute, which you can find at bpiworld.org. They have a searchable database of compostable products. And if you want to get involved in advocating for composting, and we need a lot more of these facilities, check out the U.S. Composting Council at compostingcouncil.org. They offer lots of useful information, and you can join or even organize your state's grassroots advocacy organization. There's a lot to do, so let's get busy, folks. I hope to take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 440 interviews that we've done on sustainability in your ear with your friends, your family, your coworkers. If you take a moment to write a review on your favorite podcast platform, that will help your neighbors find us. You folks are the amplifiers that help us spread more ideas to create less waste. So tell folks they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the places that they prefer to go to find their podcast goodness. Thanks for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.